This is Mr. Black Terror, and you've just stepped into the darkest corner of the internet. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? What hour of the night is it? And don't forget to share this video with anyone who laughs at horror stories. Let them hear what real fear sounds like.
I've served as a deputy sheriff in Carbon County, Wyoming for 11 years, and winter out here does something strange to people. Maybe it's the isolation. Maybe it's the way the wind carries sound across miles of empty land. Or maybe it's something older, something that doesn't care about our badges or our laws. This happened last January, during that brutal cold wave that shut down half the state. Temperatures dropped to minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit, and the snow came down in sheets so thick the road disappeared even under my high beams. I was doing a welfare check on a man named Harold Sutter, age 68, who lived alone at the edge of Medicine Bow National Forest. His neighbor reported that Harold hadn't picked up his mail or answered his phone for 4 days. Harold was the kind of guy who split his own firewood at dawn and brewed coffee strong enough to melt a spoon. If he was quiet for 4 days in the middle of a deadly winter, something was wrong. The drive to his cabin took me an hour, even with chains on my tires. The wind pushed the patrol truck sideways, and the forest was so dark it felt like the trees leaned toward the headlights. When I finally reached Harold's place, the first thing I noticed was the porch light flickering not just dim, but pulsing like it was reacting to something. The second thing I noticed was the footprints. They weren't Harold's, and they weren't from boots. They looked almost human, but longer, as if the toes had stretched, and the stride was too long, spaced like whatever made them walk with a slow, deliberate drag. The kind of drag something uses when it shouldn't be walking at all. I called out, "Harold, sheriff's office." No answer. The snow around the cabin was disturbed, but only on the sides and the back. It was like someone or something had slowly circled the house for hours. The prints disappeared into the tree line, where the wind wiped the snow smooth. I put my glove on the doorknob. It was warm in a minus 31 winter. That door should have been frozen stiff, but the knob felt like someone had held it moments ago. I unholstered my weapon, pushed the door open with my shoulder, and stepped inside. The cabin was pitch black except for the orange glow of the wood stove, which hadn't been fed in a long time. Air inside was cold, but not cold enough to match outside. Someone had kept the heat running until recently. "Harold." I called again. That's when I heard Ida whisper, not words, just breath right behind me. I spun so fast, I slipped on the rug and nearly went down. But nothing was there, just my own breath, fog in the air. I steadied myself and swept the cabin. Living room empty, kitchen untouched, table set like Harold had been about to eat breakfast. Upstairs, bedroom bed made, lamp on, window cracked open like someone left in a hurry. But the basement door was open, not all the way, it's just a sliver, enough to show darkness thicker than any I'd seen. I radioed dispatch. "Dispatch. This is 2 to 7. I'm at Sutter's residence. No sign of the subject. Check in basement. Please keep channel open. Copy that. 227. Backup is 40 minutes out." "Okay," dispatch replied. 40 minutes. Plenty of time for something to go wrong. I stepped toward the basement, and the air grew colder. The door hinge creaked when I pushed it. The darkness below ate the beam of my flashlight, as if the light struggled to stay alive. Halfway down the steps, I smelled it not decayed, not rot. Something metallic, like blood, but sharper, almost chemical. "Harold," I said, softer now, "if you're down here, I need you to speak up." Something moved behind a furnace, a shuffle, then a low scraping sound like fingernails dragged across concrete. I raised my light. That's when I saw Harold. He was standing in the far corner, facing the wall like a child in timeout. His nightshirt was soaked through, and every breath made his shoulders tremble. "Harold, talk to me. Are you hurt?" He didn't move. I stepped closer, heart hammering so hard my hands vibrated. Double quotes. "Sir." I'm going to approach. Harold, twisted like his spine, moved in one motion. His face was pale, eyes sunken, pupils blown so wide they swallowed the iris. In his mouth, his lips were split, jagged, and bruised like he'd been whispering through a mouth not made to whisper. Then he said something. Not words? Sound like someone inhaling while trying to scream. I froze. "Harold, we need to get you outside." "I'm calling Ems." He stepped forward, but his feet didn't move. He slid, like his body was being pulled by invisible strings. Every hair on my neck rose. My instincts screamed at me to run, but training kept me rooted. The light flickered. The basement walls popped with sudden cold, and Harold's jaw unhinged, wider than it should. Tendons stretching, skin tearing. Then he whispered. This time, I heard it. It wasn't English. It wasn't human. But my brain understood it anyway. A message without language. It's not him. Every muscle in my body locked up. The thing wearing Harold's skin lunged. I fired 1, 2, 3 shots, but the bullets thudded into the wall as the form dissolved into a shadow that moved across the room like smoke, slipping through the cracked basement window into the snowstorm. Harold's body crumpled to the floor, cold, empty. Autopsy said he'd been dead for 2 days before I got there, meaning the thing I spoke to wasn't Harold, and it had been waiting in that basement long before I arrived. Forest rangers found strange tracks deep in the snow later long, dragging impressions leading miles into the trees. No known animal matched them. The case was closed as hypothermia, but I know better. Whatever I saw in that basement, it wasn't finished, because sometimes in the dead of winter, when I'm out on patrol and the radio goes quiet, I still hear that whisper behind me, not words, just breath, as if something is waiting for me to open a door and let it back in. I still remember the first night the wind cut so sharply across the plains that it felt like needles against my face. Winter in Crook County, Wyoming, never plays fair, but that night pushed the line between brutal and unnatural. My name is Sheriff Nathan Griggs, 22 years on the job, okay? And if you'd asked me back then what scared me, I'd have said, not much. I was wrong. That night taught me there are things in these empty stretches that don't care about laws, training, or guns. It started with the call at 12:47 a.m. I was halfway through paperwork when dispatch crackled through. Her voice tight, like she was holding her breath. "Sheriff, unit wanted near Red Butte Road. Caller says something is circling their cabin. Husband unresponsive. Circling." I almost asked what she meant, but something in her tone told me she didn't know how to explain it. So I grabbed my jacket, stepped out into the biting cold, and drove off into the storm that was thickening by the minute. Snow blew sideways across my headlights, turning everything beyond into a blur of white and shadow. The cabin belonged to the Horn family. Good people. Lived quiet. 2 kids gone to college. Now parents stayed behind. When I turned onto their road, my tires slipped over frozen gravel, and my stomach tightened. Every instinct I had was twisting. Something was wrong long before I saw the house. The cabin's lights were flickering off, unlike something was draining them. The generator behind the house coughed and sputtered, and over everything, there was no sound. No wind, no storm, just a thick, heavy silence that pulled at my ears. I stepped out with my flashlight and felt the temperature drop instantly around me. Not cold wrong, cold, the kind that wraps around you intentionally like fingers. As I approached the porch, I saw deep marks in the snow. Not footprints, not paws. Long, dragging arcs, like something with weight had been pulled around the house in circles. The hair on my arms rose beneath my jacket. I knocked once. Sheriff's Department. Anyone inside? The door creaked open on its own. That's never a good sign. Never inside. The living room was dim. One lamp flickering. Mrs. Horn stood in the corner, arms tight around herself, shaking. Her eyes were wide, pupils huge like she'd been staring into the dark too long. "Where's your husband?" I asked. She pointed toward the bedroom, but didn't speak. Her jaw trembled like she was freezing, but there were beads of sweat along her hairline. I moved through the hallway slowly, hand on my holster. At the bedroom door, I smelled something metallic. Not blood, older. Like Russ, Mr. Horn was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the window. Perfectly still, too still. When I called his name, he didn't react. His face was pale, his lips blue, and his eyes were glassy like he'd been staring at something for hours. I stepped closer, speaking gently. "Sir, you with us?" His voice came out in a whisper so soft, I barely caught it. It wanted inside. He blinked slowly. The hungry one. I felt my spine tighten. I'd heard strange ramblings from people in shock before, but this didn't sound like shock. This sounded like belief. "What did you see?" I asked. He lifted one trembling finger and pointed at the frost-covered window. I didn't see it. I felt it, watching. It pressed against the glass, not with hands, with a shape that wasn't a shape. His breathing quickened. Then it found the cracks before I could press him further. The generator outside sputtered again, and all the lights cut out. The house snapped into darkness, so pure it felt. "Sol ID," Mrs. Horn gasped from the living room. I moved back toward her, flashlight cutting across the walls. The temperature dropped even further, my breath turning white. Then I noticed something on the floor. Frost. A trail of it, leading from the back door toward the hallway I'd just walked. I didn't open that door. None of us did. But it was open now, just an inch. Cold air spilling in like smoke. "Did either of you open this?" I asked, knowing the answer. They shook their heads. I shut it firmly and locked it. But the frost on the doorknob didn't melt under my touch. It grew. That's when Mrs. Horn whispered, "Sheriff." It came back. It turned just as the living room window began to fog. From the outside. Not from heat inside the house. Something pressed against the glass. A smear, long, thin, moving slowly as though sliding downward. Too smooth to be a hand. Too high to be an animal. Then another smear beside it. Then a third. The glass groaned, bending inward slightly. I drew my weapon, flashlight aimed at the window. "Both of you behind me." Mrs. Horn clutched her husband and pulled him toward the interior hallway. The window bent again, the wood frame creaking. Then something tapped the glass, not like a knock, like testing. The generator outside roared back unexpectedly, and the lights flickered on. The window was empty. No fog, no marks, nothing, except the smear lines remained on the inside now. That was impossible. But there were 3 streaks of frost sliding down the interior surface, as though something had dragged cold fingers along it. "Get your coats," I said firmly. "You're coming with me." Now, Mr. Horn finally moved, weak but responsive. I guided them out the door toward my cruiser. Halfway across the snow, I felt a vibration through the ground, a low hum, almost like something shifting beneath the surface. The wind picked up again, but not naturally. It swirled in a tight circle around us, blowing snow upward instead of sideways. Mrs. Horn dug her nails into my arm. "What is that?" she cried. I didn't answer. I didn't know. We reached the cruiser and got them inside. I slammed the doors, then turned to take one last look at the cabin. The back door was open again, wide. Open. Snow blowing in, and something tall stood just inside the frame. A silhouette thin, maybe 6.5 feet, but wrong in proportion. Shoulders too narrow, neck too long, head tilted. Watching me, my fingers froze around the handle of my driver's side door. My heart hammered so hard, I felt it in my teeth. The shape shifted slightly, but not with steps, more like a glide. Then the generator died again, and the cabin plunged into darkness. The silhouette vanished. I didn't wait. I jumped into the cruiser, locked the doors, and floored it out of there. Mrs. Horn cried quietly. Mr. Horn stared straight ahead, whispering something I couldn't hear when we were miles away. I finally spoke. "I'll send deputies to check the property in daylight," Mr. Horn murmured. "Daylight won't matter." Tried to reassure him. "Whatever it was, it's gone." He slowly shook his head. "It wasn't trying to get in," he whispered. "It was trying to take the cold with it. It only left because it got full." A chill ran down my spine. Full of what? His answer still echoes in me. Us. Deputies went the next morning. The cabin was undisturbed, except for frost trails across every window, inside and out. The Horns moved out of Wyoming that week. Didn't even take their furniture. I drive past that area sometimes when a call pulls me near, but I never turn down that road in every winter, especially on nights when the wind dies suddenly and the cold turns sharp and unnatural. I feel watched, not by something hungry, by something patient. My name is Sheriff Cole Hargrove, Iron Ridge County, northern Montana. Out here, winter doesn't fall gently. It ambushes you. It presses on the lungs, slows the blood, and makes every sound feel too clear. As if the cold sharpens reality into something you don't want to see. I've been on night shifts for years, but the cold week of January 2022 still stands out like an old bruise, something dark, something that aches when you think about it. It began with a single call from dispatch at 1:14 a.m. A man had reported something, screaming in the blizzard near Timberline Road. The way dispatch said something, not someone put, a chill down my spine that the heater in my cruiser couldn't push away. The storm was ugly that night. Snow wasn't falling. It was flying, slashing sideways like white knives. Headlights barely touched the road. The trees looked like tall, shadowed figures leaning across the highway, watching everything. Timberline Road was a long, isolated stretch that wound through abandoned cabins and forgotten logging trails. Locals avoided it during winter. Too many missing persons reports over the years. Too many unexplained things hunters claimed to hear out there. By the time I reached the caller's location, a rusted-out pickup stuck in a snowbank. The place felt wrong, heavy, like the air itself didn't want me there. I stepped out, boots crunching into the ice, flashlight cutting through the blur of snow. Sheriff's office. Anyone hurt? I called. No answer, just the wind roaring like it had a voice. I checked the truck. The driver's door hung open. The interior lights were still on, glowing faintly. Steam rose from the hood. Whoever had been inside left in a hurry. I found footprints heading into the tree line. Big steps, then smaller. Almost like the person had started running, then stumbling, then being dragged. That was my first real warning. I followed the tracks. Hand on my holster, heart kicking hard against my ribs. The farther I walked, the quieter everything became. The storm wasn't muffled. It was replaced, like sound had been scooped out of the world. Then I heard it, a long, warbling groan. Not human, not animal. Something stretched, distorted, like sound trying to imitate a voice, and failing. I froze. The footprints ended at a small clearing where an old cabin sagged under a thick crust of ice. I recognized it. Locals called it the Surveyor Cabin, after a forestry worker disappeared. Died in the 90s. Nobody had touched it since. The front door was wide open, swaying slowly back and forth without a single gust of wind touching it. I lifted my flashlight higher. The inside was pitch black. yet something inside reflected the light back at me. Not eyes, not metal. Something like wet glass. A soft thump echoed from deep inside, followed by a dragging noise, slow and deliberate. I should have called backup. Every training instinct screamed at me too. But something else pulled me forward, like an unseen hand gripping the edge of my coat. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Cold rot, old wood, and something sour that felt wrong to breathe. The place was dark enough to feel like it swallowed light. My beam shook across the walls, landing on claw marks, deep ones, carved into the wood, too high for anything natural. The dragging sound came again. "Sir," I said, though my voice cracked so badly it barely sounded like me. "This is Sheriff Hargrove. I'm here to help." Silence. Then a whisper, low and rasped, came from behind a broken door at the back of the cabin. "Deed, don't let it talk. Don't talk to it. Not don't let it near you, but don't let it talk." I swallowed hard. "Sir, come out slowly. I'm armed." The shadows behind the door shifted, but the figure that stepped into the light wasn't a person anymore. At least, not fully. His face was stretched too long, as if frozen mid-scream. His skin was pale and tight, paper thin. Frost clung to him like a second skin. His eyes shook rapidly in their sockets, unfocused and terrified. He stumbled toward me, hands trembling. "Cover your ears," he whispered. "Don't let it." A second voice interrupted him, a voice that sounded like him, but coming from the woods outside. "Sheriff, help." The man in front of me dropped to his knees, shaking violently. "It followed me," he choked. "It learns your voice. It learns your shape." I thought I got away. The voice outside grew louder. This time, it sounded like me. "Sheriff Cole, come outside. Bring him." My stomach dropped. The lantern on the wall flickered, and something tall passed by the cabin window. Too tall, too thin, moving with wrong angles, like broken bones shifting under skin that wasn't meant to stretch that far. The man grabbed my coat with ice-cold fingers. "Don't look at its face. Don't answer it. Don't let it say your name." The creature outside scraped a long finger across the window frame, slow and deliberate. The noise vibrated through the cabin like metal against bone. I pulled the man behind me, gun drawn, backing toward the door. The creature whispered again, now inches from the window. "Cole, let me in. The cold is killing me." Hearing my own voice distort into something hollow and pleading made my knees weaken. The man suddenly stiffened behind me, breath catching. "It got inside," he whispered. "No, I'm right here," I said. But when I turned, it was staring past me, and there it was, inside, behind me. It looked like him at first, then like me, then like something between us, melting, shifting, dragging its limbs like they were too heavy. Its jaw hung crooked, opening wider than a jaw should open. "Sheriff," it said, voice glitching between my tone and his. "Let me stay." I fired. The bullet went through it like mist. No impact, no blood, just a ripple, like shooting fog. The lights went out. The next minute was a blur of scrambling in the dark. The man screaming, the creature mimicking every sound he made with a broken echo that shook my skull. I don't remember how I got out. I remember the snow. I remember running until I reached the cruiser, slamming the door and flooring it until Timberline Road disappeared in the rear view mirror. Like a hallucination, we found the man's body the next morning, frozen solid near the tree line, but not in the shape I saw inside. His arms were bent the wrong way, his mouth stretched painfully wide, and his eyes, they looked like they were still moving, still trying to look at something behind him, something we never found. The cabin was empty, completely empty. No prints, no tracks, no sign of life. But sometimes, when I'm on patrol during the late shift, the radio crackles just once with a voice that sounds exactly like mine. Sheriff Cole, let me in. And I turn the radio off. Every time.